Welcome to GC 204, Lecture 4, Theories of Learning. Introduction. In this lecture, our discussion will focus on various theories of learning. These theories were propounded by renowned psychologists such as Ivan Pavlov, classical conditioning, Edward Thorndike, laws of learning, B.F. Skinner, theory of instrumental or operant conditioning, J.S. Brunner, theory of instruction, etc. You will read about the three major laws propounded by Thorndike on connectionism. You will also get to know about its implications to classroom situation. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, students should be able to 1. Define learning theories. 2. Discuss the classical conditioning theory of Ivan Pavlov. 3. Explain the educational implications of classical conditioning theory. 4. List the stimulus, response, SR theories with reinforcement and those without reinforcement. 5. What do you consider to be the implications of Gestalt theory of learning to classroom situation? 6. What are the two major salient characteristics of the behavioral approach? 7. Criticize the use of animal subjects by cognitive psychologists. 8. Discuss the three major laws of learning propounded by Thorndike. 9. Discuss the educational implications of Thorndike's theory. A theory is based upon a hypothesis and backed by evidence. A theory presents a concept or idea that is testable. It provides general explanation for observations made over time. What goes on in the process of learning? How does an individual learn a set of knowledge, skills, habits, interests, attitudes, and similar other things in life? Such questions have always been a subject of inquiry and investigation before psychologists, and as a result, a number of theories have come into being. Learning theories are therefore conceptual frameworks that describe how information is absorbed, processed, and retained during learning. In the broad sense, these theories may be classified into two major groups: behaviorist theories and cognitive theories. Below are some of the theories. Some of the great psychologists in the field of learning are Ivan Pavlov, Edward Thorndike, B.F. Skinner, and Brunner. Ivan Pavlov, Theories of Learning. SR Theory, Pavlovian Conditioning. Pavlov was a Russian physiologist, cum psychologist. He was well known for the classical conditioning experiments and findings. Classical conditioning is also known as respondent conditioning. The term respondent implies that the learned response is elicited involuntarily from the organism rather than produced by the organism in a voluntary or operant manner. Classical conditioning is a learning process that occurs through association between environmental stimulus and a naturally occurring stimulus. Steps in the process of classical conditioning. Step 1. Before conditioning, the bell is a neutral stimulus. Neutral stimulus, NS, is a stimulus that before conditioning does not naturally bring about the response of interest. NL's bell, no salivation, UCS Smith, UCR, salivation. Step 2. During conditioning procedure, the neutral stimulus NS is presented. It is immediately followed by the unconditioned stimulus UCS to produce unconditioned response UCR. Step 3. Test of conditioning. After the classical conditioning procedures, the neutral stimulus NS becomes a conditioned stimulus CS. It alone can produce salivation. At this point, The production of salivation is known as the conditioned response, CR. N.S. Bell, CR salivation. Relevance of Pavlov's experiment to classroom situation. Classical conditioning primarily influences emotional behavior. Things that make people happy, sad, angry, etc. become associated with neutral stimuli that gain their attention. For example, if a particular teacher produces emotional feelings in individual, those emotions are probably a result of classical conditioning. Edward Thorndike, S.R. Theory of Learning. Edward Lee Thorndike, 1874 to 1949, believed that all learning is explained by connections or bonds that are formed between stimuli and responses. Using cats, dogs, and chickens, he devised experiments in which an animal was placed in a cage from which it could escape to reach food. The food was visible but not accessible from the cage. Inside the cage was a release mechanism which could be operated by the animal. Thorndike's laws of learning. Thorndike propounded the following laws of learning on the basis of his theory. The law of readiness. When organisms, both human and animal, are ready to act or learn to do so, is satisfying, and not to do so is annoying or unsatisfying. Thorndike believed that readiness is an important condition of learning because satisfaction or frustration depends on an individual state of readiness. Schools cannot force students to learn if they are not biologically and psychologically prepared. They can learn only when they are ready. The law of exercise. This law has two parts: use and disuse. The law of use states that all things being equal, the more frequently a connection between a stimulus and a response is made, the stronger the connection will be. The law of disuse states that when a connection between stimulus and response is not made over a period of time, the strength of that connection is weakened. In this way, law of use refers to the strengthening of connection with practice, while the law of disuse refers to weakening of connection when the practice is continued. In brief, it can be said that law of exercise as a whole emphasizes the need of repetition, practice, and drill work in the process of learning. The law of effect. This law states that learning occurs only when responses are followed by reward and satisfaction. On the other hand, if frustration or punishment is experienced by the learner, the connection between stimulus and response becomes weakened. Relevance of Thorndike's experiments to learning. 1. That punishment reduces behavior as much as reward increases behavior. That is, punishment has the same effect as reward, but that punishment is negative while reward is positive. 2. From the law of exercise, it could be deduced that the more one practices, the more one understands. When teaching, buying, and selling, create a toy market where the learner can practicalize what they are learning. 3. Activities, especially in the course material, must be organized on increasing difficulty order as well as presented in varied ways so that novelty is maintained and learners progress without fear. 4. Guidance, praise, and encouragement that give pleasure and satisfaction should be provided to keep learners in the right path. 5. More and appropriate opportunities must be given to learners to use and repeat knowledge they get in class. Gestalt theory. Gestalt theory. The word Gestalt is a German word which best 1986, believes has no precise equivalent meaning in English language. The nearest interpretation could be said to mean form, whole, patterns, configuration when translated into English language. The term Gestalt was first used in 1912 by a German psychologist, Max Wertheimer, 1880 to 1943, to delineate its distinct view of psychology from structuralism, functionalism, and behaviorism schools of thought. Laws of perceptual organization in Gestalt psychology. Mind, as earlier discussed, could best be understood in the ways elements are organized. In other words, an organism groups together certain stimuli or variables which are later interpreted through perceptual ability of the organism. These grouping processes have been formulated into laws otherwise known as laws of perceptual organization. These laws could be used in learning situations. They include law of proximity, law of similarity, law of common direction, law of simplicity, law of pregnance, and law of closure. Law of proximity. This states that elements which are close together in space or time tend to be perceived as belonging. In other words, the greater the proximity of elements within a field, the more likely they are perceived to go together. Law of similarity. This states that items similar in respect to some feature, e.g., shape, color, will tend to be grouped together provided this is not overridden by proximity factors. Law of common direction. This states that a set of points be grouped together if they appear to complete or continue a series, e.g., simple line drawings, etc. Law of simplicity. This states that individuals compare objects or ideas with highly similar characteristics. For instance, generalizing the concept of a round figure to other less round figure. Law of pregnance. This states that the striving for solution tends toward a good gestalt, an organized pattern, a clear and orderly explanation. Law of closure. This states that an individual tends toward bridging the gap between the problem and its solution, toward bringing the parts into relation with one another. Implications of Gestalt's method of learning to classroom situation. 1. The emphasis on wholeness assists in the process of formulating general objectives derivable from a course of instruction. This is quite different from the common specific behavior objectives. 2. The emphasis on wholeness also helps teachers to treat topic in the course content as a whole, not as distinct from other topics in the course contents. 3. Problem solving through insight enables pupils to identify various areas of problem and materials to be reorganized in order to arrive at logical solution. Summary. In this lecture, we have looked at definition of theory, basic assumptions of behaviorists, classification of behaviorist learning theories, classical conditioning theory of Ivan Pavlov, Edward Thorndike, laws of learning, B.F. Skinner, theory of instrumental or operant conditioning, J.S. Brunner, theory of instruction, etc. You also learned about the three major laws propounded by Thorndike on connectionism. You are now familiar with implications of these theories to classroom situation. End of lecture 4. Thank you for listening.